geological timescale spans over 4 billion years. Life first emerged 3.7 billion years ago. The first modern humans only appeared 300,000 years ago. A great many wonderful and beautiful creatures have lived on this planet we call home. Howdy, and welcome back to Tom's Dino Show and Tractor Supply Co. Today, we are finally moving past the Morrison Formation, but we're still going back to 152 million years ago. For now, we are heading back to the Lindi region of Tanzania to meet a wonderful dinosaur called Kentrosaurus. Kentrosaurus is a close relative of Stegosaurus, but is smaller and had shoulder spikes, unlike its more famous cousin. Between 1909 and 1912, German paleontologist Edwin Henning unearthed over 1,200 bones of Kentrosaurus. Unfortunately, a few years later, between 1939 and 1944, some of the bones stored in Germany were destroyed. Kentrosaurus' name means prickled lizard. When I first read it, I thought it said pickled lizard. At first, I thought this dinosaur turned itself into a pickle, but he was just a prickly boy. One thing that is very interesting about Kentrosaurus is paleontologists found some evidence of sexual dimorphism, which means the female Kentrosauruses would have looked a little bit different than that of the male Kentrosauruses. We see sexual dimorphism in many modern animals. In mandarin ducks and other duck species, the male ducks are brighter and more colorful than the female ducks who are camouflaged. In Mississippi map turtles, the female turtles grow much larger than the males. In spiders, the Agryptoapenzia, the female is much larger than the male, and in orangutans, the males are larger and have very different faces than the females. In Kentrosaurus, paleontologists think the females were smaller and had more ribs than the males. Paleontologists have found some evidence of sexual dimorphism in other dinosaurs like Diplodocus. In birds, male birds tend to be smaller and more colorful than the female birds. It might be safe to assume that dinosaurs, especially those who are more closely related to birds like T-Rex or Allosaurus, might have followed the same pattern, but there hasn't been any evidence to support that idea. But why do some animals have sexual dimorphism? It can be caused by many different reasons. Sometimes when males are larger than females, it's because the males fight each other over females. The stronger and bigger ones do better than the smaller, weaker males. When the females are larger than the males, it's often because females actively raise and protect their offspring, while males generally don't help rear the offspring. When the males have striking coloration or other display methods, this comes from when females get to choose which males they like the most. My mommy says I'm a very handsome young man and any woman would be happy to have me. My wife says no other woman should be happy to be with me. As I said earlier, Kentrosaurus was a smaller dinosaur, and was much smaller than its close relative Stegosaurus. Here is Kentrosaurus' cladogram, but enough talking about Kentrosaurus, let's go meet Kentrosaurus. But before we meet Kentrosaurus, I wanted to take one more ride out over this Morrison Formation River. Since we had spent so much time here, I thought, hey, why not do one last pass to see what we can find? Over here, we have a beautiful Ceratosaurus. This fellow, unlike the other one, doesn't have albinoism. Ceratosaurus might be famous for having a nose horn, but other dinosaurs also had horns. One dinosaur we will meet later in the Cretaceous period, called Kentrosaurus, had horns like a bull. Look at this little Dryosaurus just trying to make it across the river without being eaten. I'm not sure I'd want to be that small when predators like Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus are running around, but obviously it worked out for Dryosaurs as they were around for over 30 times as long as humans have been around for. Over here, we have a whole herd of Stegosaurus. Unfortunately, Stegosaurus and its relatives don't last very long into the Cretaceous period, and we won't be seeing very many more of these guys. And look, another sleeping Diplodocus. These guys can really sleep through anything. Diplodocus might be sleeping now, but he'll probably spend most of its day grazing. You have to eat a lot if you want to be really big. What's that in the river? Oh, it's a Brachiosaurus. Brachiosaurus makes the water look so shallow with how tall they are. Just like Diplodocus, Brachiosaurus had to eat a lot. Whenever I'm struggling to finish my 10th cookie or 3rd bowl of ice cream, I think to myself, what would Brachiosaurus do? And they would keep eating. Sometimes my wife gets mad at me for eating too much candy and not eating dinner. But what she doesn't understand is that in my heart, I'm a Brachiosaurus. My doctor says I need to eat less fatty food, so if anything, eating high fructose corn syrup is what the doctor ordered. The big guy we just flew by was another Ceratosaurus, and I thought these guys were supposed to be rare. And for our last dinosaur from the Morrison Formation, we see the long-necked Apatosaurus. And now we're off to meet Kentrosaurus. Before me is a herd of Kentrosaurus. They are foraging for underwater plants. On the left side of the screen is a young Kentrosaurus. This fellow can barely keep his head above water. The two larger Kentrosaurus are his parents. The herd is larger than this, but the others have moved to another area for feeding. These Kentrosaurus need to stay on guard 24/7 as predators like Alhafrosaurus stalk these lands. Earlier, one of our interns was trying to introduce Kentrosaurus to high fructose corn syrup as part of our brand deal when a Alhafrosaurus attacked. Fortunately, the Kentrosaurus herd was able to escape. That was a few days ago, so Alhafrosaurus should be hungry again. Wow, I'm amazing at foreshadowing. And Alhafrosaurus is attacking Kentrosaurus. Let's see if Kentrosaurus can hold off against such a large, formidable predator. I guess Kentrosaurus won. Cool. But it's probably best we get on out of here. Now that we're back safe and sound, let's talk a little bit more about who Kentrosaurus was. Kentrosaurus was first thought to use its spikes in the same way porcupines do. Porcupines turn around and back into animals that are attacking them. Remember, if you see a porcupine's butt, run away. It's now believed that Kentrosaurus could whip its tail around to protect itself. Kentrosaurus' tail is very flexible and the front limbs are very strong. Paleontologists think that they would have planted their front limbs in the dirt and swung their tails back and forth to fight off predators. The tail might have even been able to move over 50 miles per hour. Sometimes I drive that fast on the highway. Next, we're moving to the Cretaceous period. Many of the most famous dinosaurs lived during this period, like T-Rex, Triceratops, and Spinosaurus. The continents are still moving slowly, and the world map has changed again. On the screen is the map of the Jurassic period. Notice how the modern continents are barely separated, and Africa and South America are still in their honeymoon phase. But now in the Cretaceous period, the continents have moved, and are starting to move into the world we know today. Can you see all the modern continents yet? As I said, a lot of things have changed between the Jurassic period and the Cretaceous period. The Cretaceous period starts with the Earth warming, but by the end of the period, the planet starts to cool again. There may have even been a mini ice age. While birds have been around since the Jurassic period, the early ancestors of modern birds first appear in the Cretaceous period. Most of the world's chalk appears during the Cretaceous period, so much so that the Cretaceous period is named after the Latin word for chalk. The same can be said for oil, with over 50% of the oil we use today was formed during the Cretaceous period. Pangea is finally gone with the last tectonic plates breaking apart, but things like grass, flowers, and fruits have finally evolved. Not only have flowering plants and grass evolved, but they very quickly become the most dominant plants on the planet. Since we're now in the Cretaceous period, I wanted to take some time to talk about what birds are. Birds are an animal, or something. Birds are actually the most common land vertebrate. Some people like to call the current day the age of the mammals, but actually it's still really the age of the dinosaurs. Speaking of dinosaurs, I still haven't explained how birds are related to dinosaurs. Shown is a very simple cladogram of modern reptiles. As you can see, squamates are the clade that modern snakes and lizards come from. Turtles, on the other hand, are pantstoonines, but it is possible they may actually be archosaurs like crocodiles, birds, and dinosaurs. Now, if we zoom in a bit more on a bird's cladogram, birds are also called aves or avelae and are related to parves, which are a type of theropod, which I'm assuming you know is a type of dinosaur. Not all paleontologists support this cladogram, but it is more accepted than other proposed ideas. It is agreed that birds evolved from theropods, but paleontologists need to find more evidence to prove how exactly the evolutionary path worked out. I've actually come up with my own theory that all animals that have hair, like dogs, humans, and cows, are actually birds, and any animal that doesn't have feathers, like the naked mole rat, snakes, and whales, are actually fish. Going back to parves, parves contain other dinosaur clades like Dromaeosaurus, also known as raptors, and troodontids, like Troodon. It's believed that all parves were feathered like birds. Let's take some time to talk about how flowers and fruits are related. Flowering plants are the most common type of plant in the world. Flowers are like this thing that my wife gets mad at me for if I give them to another woman. Flowers make pollen and release the pollen to other flowers. Pollen is very small and difficult to see with the naked eye. The pollen is released by dropping it into the wind or by sticking it to bugs like bees. Some people can get sick from breathing in too much pollen. When another flower gets pollinated, it will turn itself into a fruit. You can't have fruit without pollen and flowers. Have you ever wondered what oil and chalk is? Well, wonder no more, as I'm about to give you a Wikipedia level understanding of them. Chalk is made from tiny bits of calcite. Calcite forms from the shells of tiny creatures in the ocean called plankton. Oil comes from something very similar. Instead of being the shells of plankton, oil comes from the decaying bodies of plankton. Now you might wonder, why was there so much plankton during the Cretaceous period? That actually has something to do with what I said earlier. Pangaea is gone. With the supercontinent breaking apart, new waterways opened up between the land masses. These waterways allowed ocean currents to move more freely. Ocean currents move nutrient-rich water around the globe. Plankton feed off of this nutrient-rich water. With more nutrients, the plankton were able to explode in population. And a few million years later, they turned into chalk or oil. These are the modern-day ocean currents. Not only are these currents important to plankton, but to all life on Earth. Even humans benefit from ocean currents. But unfortunately, that's all I have for today, so I'm going to have to end the video here. On the next episode of Tom's Dino Show and Tractor Supply Co., will Tom actually talk about two different types of dinosaurs, or will he pad the runtime with surface-level science facts? Will Tom overcome his fear of Utah and be able to discuss the Utah raptor? Is Huerosaurus the last Stegosaurus we will talk about on Tom's Dino Show and Tractor Supply Co., or is Tom just illiterate? Check out next episode to find out.